This video is in continuation to our videos of grade 11th, breathing and exchange of gases. In our last video, we had discussed the brachial intercom. In this video, we will talk about the breathing mechanism. So before we start with it, the mechanism, let's understand what are the two steps of breathing. So breathing completes, or one breathing cycle completes when after one inhalation and exhalation. We can also call it inspiration and expiration. Fine, so it's one and the same thing. So inhalation and exhalation, one cycle of breathing. So we'll talk about inhalation and exhalation separately. We'll talk about inhalation, the muscles involved, then exhalation's muscle involved, and the way it takes place. Inhalation, when I say, we call inhalation an active process, and we call exhalation an inactive process. Why? Because in inhalation, the muscles are very much involved in the process of, or in the movement of thoracic cavity in and out. So we call it an active process because it leaves energy for contraction of the muscles, whereas in case of exhalation, it's just the relaxation, so no such energy is required. We call it inactive or passive type of process. So let's start with inhalation. Now when we talk about inhalation, let's see how the arrangement of rib cage is there. If I just roughly make the rib cage here and the diaphragm, a very important part here. Let's understand, we'll simultaneously draw and write. So inhalation, when I say, muscles involved, very important. Process, we know, the process of taking in air which is rich in oxygen is known as inhalation. Now the muscles which are involved in the process of inhalation are diaphragm and external intercostal muscles. So these two muscles are responsible or are involved in the process of inhalation. Let's understand, or let's see how they are present in the thoracic cavity. We all know what is the thoracic cavity, the chest cavity wherein the lungs are placed. And we all know diaphragm, but still I'll just give you a reference again. Diaphragm is a muscular sheet which separates thorax from abdomen. Now if I say diaphragm, like for example, अगर मैं इसका ऊपर से if I show you the view, so diaphragm ऐसे पूरा सर्कल की तरह कवर करता है हमारा रिब केज के नीचे. एक पूरा मतलब एक पतली सी फिल्म है पूरे लंग्स के नीचे, ऐसे इसके ऊपर यहाँ पे we have the lungs and all. फाइन. सो कहने का मतलब है कि इट कवर्स द होल थिंग. यहाँ पे पूरा ऐसे एक बार नहीं है, इट्स जस्ट लाइक अ फ्लैटेंड थिंग अराउंड इट इन द एब्डोमेन. नाउ we have the ribs and the diaphragm here. Diaphragm, it has phrenic muscles, or which are also called as radial muscles. Radial muscles, one and the same thing. Phrenic muscles, radial muscles, which are present here. How are they present? They are, if suppose this is the vertebral column and this is the rib cage, and just herein we all know there are 12 pair of ribs. So these phrenic muscles, they are attached here with diaphragm and the rib cage like this. So as I told you, it is covering the whole thing. It's just like a flat surface. तो ये पूरा periphery पे diaphragm, अगर suppose if suppose this is the diaphragm, तो पूरा डायफ्राम पे यहाँ पे पूरे उसके पेरिफेरी के ऊपर फ्रेनिक मसल्स आर प्रेजेंट, और द रेडियल मसल्स. रेडियल मतलब अराउंड द रेडियस, सो वी कॉल इट फ्रेनिक और द रेडियल मसल्स. सो इट इज सराउंडिंग द होल. तो पूरा जो रिब केज है उसके नीचे दिस फ्रेनिक मसल्स आर अटैच्ड, एक साइड पे अटैच. जैसे यहाँ पे तो हमने वी मेड इट ऑन वन साइड, ऐसे वन साइड पे नहीं है, इट्स थ्रू आउट द पेरिफेरी ऑफ द डायफ्राम. एंड These phrenic muscles are responsible for the movement of diaphragm. Contraction of these phrenic muscles, if they contract, they flatten the diaphragm. We all know that diaphragm is a dome-shaped structure. It's a dome-shaped structure. When it flattens during inhalation and it becomes more of dome shape during exhalation. So this is the movement of the diaphragm, which is controlled by phrenic muscles. So contraction leads to flattening of the diaphragm. So phrenic and the radial, phrenic or radial muscles, one and the same thing. यहाँ पे लिख देते हैं that their contraction leads to flat diaphragm. Okay? Then we have external intercostal muscles. Now we know there are 12 pair of ribs. In between these ribs are the intercostal muscles. There are 12 pair of ribs, and in between these ribs there are these intercostal muscles. So there are 11 pair of external intercostal muscles. 11 pair of intercostal muscles which are responsible for movement of the thoracic cavity in and out. So this contraction of external intercostal muscles lead to the movement of the thoracic cavity outward. So herein let's write contraction of these muscles lead to movement of thoracic cavity outwards, up and out, you can say. So up, contraction of phrenic muscles or radial muscles has taken place and the external intercostal muscle has taken place, which is now going to increase the thoracic cavity. Kaise? Thoracic moves outside, ribs move outside, diaphragm, it flattens. It was dome shaped, it flattens. So there is more of space in the thoracic cavity for taking in or for the expansion of the lungs, so that maximum air can move inside for inhalation. Now how this inhalation ka process takes place? How do we explain that? So let's write here the steps for inhalation. First step would be again contraction of muscles, which leads to increase in thoracic cavity. Increase in what? Increase in volume. Let's write increase in volume of thoracic cavity. When the volume increases, when the volume of thoracic cavity increases, pressure decreases. And when the pressure decreases, according to when we talk about the partial movement of the air according to partial pressure, so wherever the pressure is less, the movement takes place from high to low. So pressure is decreased, so hence outside pressure is more, so air from out moves inside the thoracic cavity for inhalation. So let's see the steps once again. Contraction of the muscle takes place, which leads to increase in volume of thoracic cavity. When the volume of thoracic cavity increases, the partial pressure inside the thoracic cavity decreases. And this decrease, it's minus 1 mg approximately. And then what happens when the pressure outside is more and inside it is less? So what happens? The air from outside gushes in or moves inside the thoracic cavity. The process is known as inhalation, active process, because energy is required for movement or contraction of these muscles. Let's talk about exhalation. Exhalation, of course, it is opposite to whatever we've done. That is, it is opposite to the movements taking place. But again, we will talk about the muscles first. Same muscles. There is a diaphragm. We'll write here relaxation of diaphragm cause diaphragm to become dome shaped. Then external intercostal muscles. Relaxation of them leads to thoracic cavity moving in. So again, if we talk about the steps here, so the steps are ulta, so the process also gets ulta. So steps involve: 1, relaxation of muscles, which leads to decrease in volume of thoracic cavity, which leads to increase in pressure. When pressure increases, air moves out. So this is how the process of exhalation takes place. Inhalation an active process, exhalation a passive process. Herein what you need to remember is how many pairs of external intercostal muscles are there, types of muscles present, diaphragm, which are phrenic or radial. दोनों एक ही चीज है, radial भी लिख सकते हैं, phrenic भी लिख सकते हैं. And where are they present? These phrenic muscles are present throughout the periphery of the diaphragm. So this is all about the process of inhalation and exhalation. We in this process of inhalation and exhalation we sometimes forcefully exhale also. अगर forceful inhalation है, of course it's an active process, तो कोई change नहीं होगा. But if it is a forceful exhalation, it becomes an active process. So there are changed, the muscles change now. So we will talk about the forceful expiration in our next video, which will become an active process now. So keep watching, liking, sharing.